So Elden Ring Nightreign has dropped, and a lot of you guys are really having a lot of fun. There were some mixed opinions on release, but I can see that a ton of people out there have really been enjoying this game. But one thing is absolutely clear, especially as a solo player. This game is hard. According to what I've read from a lot of you guys and all of the feedback that I can see, it really seems like, for the most part, the biggest criticism for this game is just that solo feels almost impossible, especially for a new player. Nightreign is all about your ability to defeat insanely hard enemies like the Revenant, but quickly as well. In terms of difficulty, this game is hard on all three fronts. The player must be proficient at Souls games to input the combat, dodging bosses, knowing the movesets, deflecting like a champ, and of course parrying. There's also macro, as you need to route where you're going on the map, learning how to get strong and what you actually need to do to win, and decision making and putting together a strong build no matter the RNG, which by the way is objectively hard because Elden Ring has more weapons, talismans, and nuanced details than maybe any other video game ever made. However, despite the game being designed for mostly a party of 3, playing as a solo is not only possible, but can be very fun. And if you hear me out and give it a chance, I'd like to show you what it takes to win. The only requirement to watch this video is understanding the basic details of the game. If you've gone and done just a couple of runs or messed around with some of the classes, you should be good to go. Keep in mind, as of recording this video, solo play has been buffed and is actually easier now, which is really nice. I'm going to do a breakdown of 2 of my solo runs. The first was before the patch, and the second will be what it looks like after the patch. This run was essentially my personal best. As a complete solo, we hit the max level of 15 before the days were even over, with more than 100,000 runes to spare. I did not die a single time or go down once, and I showcase gameplay that does take a lot of practice to learn. But we will also talk about this run that came post-patch. I made a lot of mistakes, played much sloppier overall, I was more passive and more hesitant to fight the hard bosses, and I even died numerous times. So even though the first run I'm going to show you is quite good, it's actually the second one that really showcases you do not have to be perfect mechanically to win, but rather with good planning and smart calculated play, I truly believe you can do it. We will start as the Executor. We've locked in this class for a couple of reasons. Executor is the class with the deflecting mechanic, and yes, we will be doing all kinds of stylish deflects, but there's a lot more here. Executor also has a very helpful ultimate where you turn into this crazy wolf god. But actually, the biggest reason for using this class is, simply put, it does amazing damage. Just the way that Nightreign has been balanced on release, Executor seems to do the most damage. They scale the best with Dexterity and Arcane, which is what you want for status effects like bleeds and poisons. As we drop into the world, here is a layout of our run. We will be hunting the Augur boss, a big jellyfish that players have said is a horrible boss and can't be beaten as melee, so let's give it a try and see what it's like. In order to make the map much easier to read, I'm going to remove all of the spirit streams, sites of grace, and everjails, as these locations never change on a run. We end up dropping here in the north, and I notice immediately something that would give a lot of players hesitation about this seed. Likely the single most important monument to hit are the churches to increase your healing flasks, and unfortunately, all of ours are on the bottom side. This does not by default mean that this seed is just unlucky, but rather we will have to plan carefully and hopefully work our way down there. On any run, your very first objective should be to farm the first camp of trash mobs quickly, grab the loot, and find a site of grace to hit level 2. When breaking boxes and looting enemies, we are looking for any and all items that will help us. This could include things like warming stones, gold pickle foul feet, as well as greases and other consumables. Again, there will always be some nuance here, but generally remember that gold pickle foul foot is much better as a use of your inventory slot than something like an albinaric pot. As we approach our first monument, we are spawned near a cathedral, so let's talk about the points of interest. I have labeled each of them on a tier of difficulty to get a rough idea. Cathedrals, forts, and encampments are all good to do during the beginning and day 1. Ruins and everjails are a little bit trickier, and field bosses and the castle in the middle are much more difficult, but will always drop the best loot and will guarantee rares. However, what is interesting about Nightreign is that the game is not at all truly random. It's not even close to like a randomizer mod in Elden Ring. You will never enter the castle and find Melania, as she is not in the game. Instead, the way the game works is that it randomizes based on a select list. So for the cathedrals, if it's not labeled with an elemental type, it will always either be a Mausoleum Knights with teleporting headless enemies, or it has a Guardian Golem. We can see that our cathedral is labeled as the Holy variant, meaning that it will always be the bubble-blowing babies. Just from playing the game in my experience, these guys are really squishy and easy to kill, but also deal a lot of damage. So since we're not desperately in need of holy damage and our ultimate is not ready yet, I decide to skip this and work our way down south. Instead, I run all the way down the river and do an opener that I've really been liking. You can hit this golden tree and jump up the spirit stream, and for the next 2 full minutes, you can hit trash mobs and gain additional runes. I then work my way into one of the unlabeled cathedrals, which turns out to be the Guardian Golem boss. We also get a lot of value from hitting these enemies from our extra rune gain. As we kill both the trash mobs and the boss, we get some loot, and we decide to pick up the Golem Greatbow, even though I don't fire a single arrow in this entire run and never use it. So why would I do that? Well, this is how you build a character in Nightreign. This Golem Greatbow comes with improved damage negation at low HP, meaning when our HP is low, all damage types against us are less effective, and this is huge. By simply having this Golem Greatbow in any one of our 6 weapon slots, it will give us this passive. We don't have to be using it, or even wearing it in our offhand, and it doesn't have to be good for our class. As long as we are holding this item, we gain this passive. Another good example is later on in this run, I find a Clean Rot Night Sword, which says it improves incantations. So if you're playing the Recluse class or Revenant, who scale very well with Faith and can use incants, even if you have no plans on hitting anything with this sword, this would actually be a pretty good pickup and a good build for your run. The only thing you need to look out for are these symbols. This item says it gives FP restoration on attacks, but this little hand tells you that you must be actively holding and using the weapon to gain the effect, so make sure while you're looking to pick up the loot, it actually makes sense for your build and something you're going to use. Anyway, we are now level 4, and according to our map, here is where the zone is going to close. Even though we ran south in the hopes to get to these churches, not a single one ends up being in the day 1 zone, and it's at this point where in order to recover this run, we are going to have to improvise. As we ran past the castle, I noticed that it was the Crucible Knight layout, which is one of the 3 possible castles. There are Crucible Knights, Magic Throwing Pot Trolls, and Banish Knights. And because we're playing Executor, Crucible Knights are the best possible role we could have gotten. I understand that the complex enemy variety in Elden Ring makes it really overwhelming to learn all of these different movesets, but what's cool about Nightreign being not a true randomizer is that you'll have the opportunity on a lot of your runs to come here and practice and fight these guys. Throughout this run, the reason why we're able to get so many runes and do well is because I was able to clear out every single Crucible Knight. But that doesn't mean you absolutely have to do this to win, especially at level 4. It's just that having the skill to deal with your enemies and knowing how the combat works is kind of what the game is all about. A really important note for Crucible Knights as well is that often you're not seeing me take the critical or riposte, and there's 2 main reasons for that. First, the Executor's animation for the critical, while being fancy and cool, takes 3 business days to complete and really slows down your time to kill. Additionally, and this is just another knowledge check about Elden Ring, but Crucible Knights are extremely resistant to critical hits, and it's usually more damage on them to just charge up a heavy attack after a stagger than it is to take the riposte. As we kill our first Crucible Knight, he drops a hefty amount of runes, and we continue to farm the trash mobs. I was feeling pretty good about this run now because we didn't die to this Crucible Knight, until... Well, this is called an invasion, and randomly you can either get invaded by the Night Lord bosses, even the ones we're not actively hunting, and you can get invaded by a very challenging version of Morgott. The invasion that we got is from the Sentient Pest, who will spawn these clouds of locusts that steal your runes and de-level you. Seriously. So now we have to deal with this, and we have to dodge these explosions or we will lose a level. Even though we're level 5, our big problem now is that we don't have an upgraded weapon, so let's try to fix that by going into the mines. These mines act as cave networks to traverse the map, but more importantly, every mine has one mini-boss who is guaranteed to drop a smithing stone 2. And what that means in practice is that because there are merchants who sell you a smithing stone 1, if you head into the mines on day 1, you can begin every run by upgrading your common tier starting weapon twice into a rare purple. By doing this, you will increase your damage output significantly. In our case, the mine that we chose has a Godric Knight as the mini-boss, and so once we get there, we will immediately use our ultimate. So let's talk about this wolf form. The massive wolf that you can turn into is one of the best ultimates in the game. While in this form, you have an entire moveset here. You have light attacks, heavy attacks, jump attacks, even a chargeable spell on L2. It also gives you a massive health bar and does act as a sort of potion. It will heal you completely to full, even if you're 1 HP. My personal favorite use case for this ultimate is to help wave clear otherwise challenging groups of enemies, and you can spam the jumping heavy attacks over and over again to wipe out groups. By using our ultimate, we successfully clear out the knight for his smithing stone 2, and we make it to a merchant to upgrade our weapon to a +2. Even though we got our weapon upgraded, this run really isn't looking that good. The zone is closing in, I haven't been able to hit a single church, we've lost 3 levels from the locust explosions and the invasions, and we really haven't found anything that good. I'm almost positive if this exact game state happened to someone, they would leave a negative review for the game and uninstall immediately. They would say it's basically just an RNG hell that is guaranteed to make you fail. And if you didn't really know any better, you might think that this run is basically over now. But the Locust Invasion, if you can survive, is actually beneficial on your run. The game prompts you to find the enemy stealing your runes, and as we are running around, we do. All of a sudden, this run that was essentially doomed is now on great pace. By winning the invasion and surviving, you are rewarded with all of your runes back, and for the rest of the run, you gain a power that grants you a ton of extra money. The only real issue we have right now is that we still only have 3 flasks, but we have a purple weapon and we are already level 8. The first night boss that we have to face is the Wormface gank fight. This is one of the trickier options, but once you learn how it works, it's not too bad. The Wormface enemies are scary as they do apply a status called Death Blight, and if this bar fills to full, you will instantly die. But during this fight, the rats can be killed to drop the boluses that you need to counteract it. Also, the Wormface boss itself is susceptible to being headshot, status effects, and really isn't all that tanky. In our case, we do a good job of showcasing just how important it is to use your consumables and your class well. We will pop all of the consumables for the fight, and we can just get in there with our ultimate. While we're in our ultimate, we don't really take any Deathblight from the ground, and we can spam the jumping heavy attacks. By finishing off with a massive L2, for what should be a very scary fight, we honestly blast him. I would say now we are cooking pretty hard. We're heading into day 2, and to be level 10 at the end of the first night boss is really good, and we will continue to gain a lot more runes thanks to our Locust power. Our day 1 zone closed in at the top left of the map, which means that more or less the way that the day 2 zone will work is that it's going to close at the opposite end, and on this run that's exactly what happened. That is almost always how it's going to work, and so because of that, I'm planning on taking out the field bosses in our immediate area, since I know that whatever is up here will no longer be accessible very soon. And in our case, we got some really nice options with both the Erdtree Avatar and the Miranda Flower fight. The Miranda Flower is essentially free and is entirely trivial, so let's talk about the Erdtree Avatar. These guys are one of the more simple movesets in the game and became easier in Nightreign due to the super sprint to strafe the Golden Land attack. And you know what? This is just where having experience in Elden Ring makes all of the difference. The amount of these guys that I've killed is insane. Myself and many others have already practiced this moveset many times before because there's a lot of these guys, and one of them in Dragon Barrow rewards a lot of runes and is good to kill in your normal Elden Ring runs. And in our case, it ends up being worth for the time, as field bosses can give incredible loot. We end up getting a power that is absurdly good for our build. Anytime we proc bleed, which is what the Executor is all about, we increase our attack power. Another good example of taking what the game gives me is how I decided to drop into this encampment and take out the flame chariots. This camp is really quick and simple, and even though it's not worth a lot of runes, it's just one more roll of a boss power where we could get an upgrade. And guess what? We do in fact get something really good. This item has a great passive for us to hold. Finally, we hit up these two churches, increasing our healing flasks, and we will also take out the Leonine Misbegotten field boss. And again, this enemy isn't too challenging to learn how to fight, especially on day 2 if we already have a purple weapon and we're level 12. While it's really cool that I got to style on him with our deflections and do some cool stuff, you can also just dodge the boss normally and take your time. I really like this moveset as well because there's a lot of things you can do with strafes and jumps. After doing all that, it's finally time for us to return to the castle. On every run, this is where you'll want to end up farming if it's going well and you've got a nice build. All of the enemies, regardless of whether you get trolls, crucibles, or banished knights, will reward you with a lot of runes and boss powers. There's also some guaranteed things that you'll find here. The basement will always have a boss down in the sewers. Additionally, the roof will always have a boss, and there's a pretty cool parkour trick that you can do to get up there much quicker. Finally, there are 2 static spots for merchants, which you should always visit on your solo runs and spend 10k runes to buy a Wending Grace. This item will revive you if you go down, which is extremely important for solo play. In our case, because we were doing so well, I also pick up the pouch and some warming stones. And this next bit was my favorite part of the run. As we approach the boss in the basement, you will notice something a bit weird, which is that you don't see anyone here. This means that the boss is going to spawn in as a revenant, and without question, this is one of the most infamous enemies in Elden Ring. It has a ridiculously fast moveset, makes a horrifying sound, and will chase you and roll catch you so fast that you're not even sure what to do. And of all of the enemies in Nightreign, this might be one of my least comfortable enemy movesets. In all of my time playing Elden Ring, I've barely practiced these guys, but that's what makes Nightreign so interesting, and that's what it's all about. Because I know what's coming and what needs to happen, it all comes down to execution and good gameplay. Even though I do get hit a ton of times and make a lot of mistakes, we are able to take out the boss. And as much as millions of people out there despise this enemy type, it is by no means impossible to dodge, and if you ever need a refresher on how to dodge basically any boss moveset, you can always search up on YouTube of somebody doing no-hits or challenge kills for any enemy type. We continue on doing a full clear of the castle, taking out every Crucible Knight. I remember during this run that I couldn't stop smiling as I was having so much fun deflecting each one of them. Kill after kill would go by and we are just banking in the runes. With everything done now that we need to do at the end of day 2, the zone closes in and we've hit the max level of 15. All that is left is to take out this night boss. And what do you know? It's the Godskin duo. Not only is this one of my more practiced enemies, as they are a main boss requirement to kill in Elden Ring, but generally these 2 enemies are some of my favorites that FromSoft has ever made. Interestingly, in Nightreign, both of these enemies have received a big buff and have all new moves to deal with, but of course, so have we. In vanilla Elden Ring, you don't turn into a literal wolf god or have super sprint, so even though Godskin duo is a difficult fight, in this case it wasn't too bad. Finally, we arrive at the Night Lord, and with over 150k runes left over, we purchase another Wending Grace, meaning that we have 2 revives during the fight, and actually because this was done before the patch, on the live servers right now, we would have 3. The way that the game now works in solo is you essentially gain a free Wending Grace for each of the main boss fights. And for the average player, this is a really nice change, and I'm glad that they did it. It doesn't interfere with any kind of challenge runs either, because for players who are skilled enough to not die, you can just add some self-imposed restrictions like a deathless run. With everything that I've read from you guys, it seems like this is the most hated boss in Nightreign. The jellyfish spends almost the entire time running away from you, spawns adds with exploding jellyfish and tentacles, and will even drop a nuke on your head that sleeps you. Somehow though, it doesn't really bother me that much. Maybe I just really like the spectacle or the way the boss looks. I don't know if it clicks with me a little better, but playing slow and getting in the jump attacks to help get the stagger is kind of fun. I have also not mentioned too much about relics, but the one that I took was extremely helpful here. This boss is weak to lightning damage, and so throughout the run I was using a relic that made my starting weapon have the Thunderbolt Ash of War. This was very clutch to land some range damage on the boss. Even though it was very close at the end and I ran out of heals, eventually we did take down the boss without needing to pop either one of our Wending Graces. Alright, and this is the other solo run that I wanted to show you because it's so much different than the first one, yet still the result is the same. We got a chance to win. And I think it's really cool because the map layout was completely different. Yeah, by the way, there was this rotted woods in our southeast, which is one of the shifting earth events that can happen on your map. You can have a mountain, you can have this capital city, volcano, and the rotted woods, and all of these are really cool and definitely change the gameplay. I don't reach max level on this run like the previous one, and in fact I died a couple of times because I'm a goober. Right off the bat I noticed something completely different from the last map, which is that our churches are actually pretty close, so of course that becomes objective number 1. Now, the churches spawning closer to us is definitely good, but it's arguably not the most important thing we got. This is because we also see a township. This is a location that you will not get on every run, but when you do, all of a sudden you've got a better chance to succeed. The township will feature a grand merchant, and his shop is entirely separate from the map-wide merchant shop that can be found at forts, encampments, and the castle. This means that not only does my bro sell incredibly good items like talismans, weapons, and smithing stone 2s, but his Wending Grace is not the same as all of the other merchants. So just to be sure, let's be clear on how this works. You can buy a Wending Grace from any of the standard merchants during your run, and you certainly should. But you can also buy a separate Wending Grace from the township. You could then receive a Wending Grace as a rare drop, even more so if you're playing as the Iron Eye class, because his passive makes it more likely to find rare loot. And then you can buy the final grace from your Day 3 shop right before the Night Lord. Additionally, the patch that buffed solo play now gives us a free revive for every major fight, and our character's passive allows us to cheat death and instantly revive ourselves if we make a mistake, but it has a cooldown. So this means that in theory, you could die at the first night boss, but then get revived by Wilder passive, die again, but get revived by the free Wending Grace that we now have, then do basically the exact same thing for the second night boss, and then go into the final boss with a full inventory of Wending Graces for a total of 6 potential revives on the final boss. Theoretically, you could successfully complete a solo expedition on Wilder with more than 10 deaths to the bosses. I bring this up to remind you that you do not have to be the perfect player, and you are allowed to make mistakes to beat solo. Just because the game is hard doesn't mean it has no mechanics to help you. Anyway, because our Grand Merchant sells some really good weapons, I decided to pick one, which was the Rotten Battle Hammer. We're also going to use a relic that gives our starting weapon some poison, so right here at the beginning of the run, we were able to get a double status effect build going with poison and rot. Generally on this run, I feel like I played a lot more tame and passive. I didn't kill that many bosses in the early game, I didn't go to the castle at level 4, I played slow, I farmed a lot of trash mobs and easier enemies, and I kept revisiting back to the township to buy more upgrades and that all-important Wending Grace. I did go ahead and open an Everjail though, and I found myself in a gank fight with the Misbegottens, and this type of situation is exactly where Wilder shines. God, that is so satisfying. Anyway, going into the first night boss, we are using a purple tier Rotten Battle Hammer, but our level is really low from buying out the shop. To be honest, had I not been so slow in my routing, there's no reason why we should have only been level 4, but thankfully because our weapon is purple tier and we have the status effects, we're not doing bad on damage. This also gives me a good opportunity to talk about playing solo and how in a lot of ways this Knights Cavalry duo is far easier than the version you would find in Elden Ring. This is because the devs for Nightreign did a good job of making the AI on gank fights a lot more passive. Bosses like the Tree Sentinel in Double Cavalry sounds like it would be a nightmare, but if you take your time and play slow in these fights, they're actually rather simple. Either way, after defeating the boss, we are now level 6, and even though it's still a bit early, it's time to explore the Rotten Woods on day 2. I fly with the bird right into the thick of it, and wow, this place is cool. Whenever you do one of these Shifting Earth expeditions, these areas are meant to be for day 2 and will feature tons of high-level enemies and loot. Thankfully though, the monument that spawns here is pretty safe from the rot and features yet another merchant. Even though we're only level 6 and it feels bad to keep spending all of this money, you will see me buy this Great Shield even though I have no intention whatsoever of using it to block. So why? Well again, it's all about those passives. The shield that we bought was the Eclipse Great Shield, and for only 8,000 runes, it came with a very high rolled damage negation effect. This is a similar type of effect to one of the best talismans in the game called Ritual Shield. It will massively boost your damage negation while at full HP. On your runs of Nightreign, it is your job to make these kinds of decisions. Is this passive worth the spending of 8k runes? Absolutely. Would it be worth it if he was selling it for 25k? Well, probably not. By climbing up to the top of the fort, we can learn about the secret of the Rotten Woods. There is a power that you can obtain by climbing up a tree, and this is awesome to grab. Not only does it grant you immunity to the rot so you can actually stand in this area, but it increases your maximum health and gives you the Bloodborne/Malenia rally mechanic, allowing you to heal yourself. Now that we've picked up this power, the only real thing left for us to do is find some enemies and field bosses to kill. And unfortunately for us, the best option ends up being the Bell-Bearing Hunter. So let's address this guy. This guy, oh man, he is one of my favorite enemies to fight in all of Elden Ring, and if you know how to get him into this shield slam loop, the actual moveset is pretty fun and easy to deal with. But for some reason in Nightreign, this guy is just... I don't know, dude, he's insane, man. He is an absolute giga-tank who takes almost no damage, generally just does way too much damage, and we've come to the conclusion as a community that he's probably just bugged, and you should avoid fighting him. I recommend fighting almost any other boss, but that being said, if there was ever a build to take him down, it would be ours, as his huge HP pool isn't too much of a problem for the rot and the poison, and again, I just kind of know how to fight the boss. The next field boss that we find out here is the Magma Worm, who is one of my more practiced fights, and other than the stalling that he likes to do with the charge attack, I actually really like this enemy type, and with poison and rot, he's not too bad at all. All you gotta do is try to get those headshots. You can jump over a couple different attacks, just try to strafe him and get in that charge. But as the zone closes in, we find ourselves with a big problem. We end up getting the spawn of Outland Commander, who is Commander Nile. The issue is that not only is this a challenging fight, but more importantly, his summons are immune to status effects, which is basically our entire build. Also, for some reason, this guy is way more aggressive than the other gank fights, and in this game, they gave his lightning kick a significantly bigger hitbox, which I had not seen before this run. A lot of what he was doing totally caught me off guard, both with the gank and his different hitboxes, and because it's not exactly the same as base Elden Ring, I ended up getting owned and I died to him, costing myself one of the revives. Once his summons finally go down, we are able to take him out. However, I noticed that the day was taking a very long time to end, and that's because we see an additional night boss. This doesn't happen all the time and is pretty rare, but the crazy thing is that it ends up being a Dancer of the Boreal Valley, which is a boss from Dark Souls 3, and I've never played Dark Souls 3. This was my first ever time fighting her, and it shows. I died not once, but twice. Anyway, we got through it, and now it's time to fight the final boss, Fulgur. While I do really like this guy, and I've got most of his moves in Phase 1 down, his Phase 2 is still all over the place for me, and I have no idea how to fight him. The spam of all of the goo is wild, and I really need to practice. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is what he is weak to, which is lightning damage. We ended up picking up an offhand weapon that is used to completely nullify and turn off one of his super attacks. The way that it works is that you hit him with lightning damage as he goes into the attack, and you break him out of the move. You cannot turn it off every single time because the effect does have a cooldown, but it will alleviate a lot of pressure. Despite my best efforts, because this was only my second time ever fighting him, I got hit many different times. Thankfully, due to all of our revives, we can get back up, and at the very end, when we get the rod proc, I take a huge hit that puts me on literally what must have been less than 5 health. Oh my god, I'm so low, but we got him. It's so crazy that I didn't lose, and what's crazier to me is that I died more than 5 times at the very end. I died once to Nile, twice to the Dancer, and twice to Fulgur. After the patch that they buffed solo play, you do not have to be a perfect player. You do not need to know how to perfectly fight every enemy in the game, and you don't have to be some insanely efficient challenge runner. With just a little bit of planning, patience, and practice, and, honestly some dumb luck to live on 1 HP, you can solo Elden Ring Nightreign. This run, in terms of my execution and gameplay, was nowhere near as good as the first one, but the result is the same. We won. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful for you, and if it was, please feel free to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.